Homelessness Board. My name is Sean Murphy, and I am the chair. You want to introduce yourself, Pat?
My name is Pat Farr. Poverty and Homelessness Board voting member. I am one of the co-vice chairs.
And Mike, would you introduce yourself?
Good afternoon. My name is Wayne Fleck, and I'm also a co-chair on the PHB.
Thank you. And so before we approve the consent agenda, I just want to throw out there as a reminder that this is the executive committee meeting, so we're going to be talking, and then I will give everybody, if we have time within the agenda, opportunity to give feedback and then jump in. So do not think I'm ignoring you if we're having a conversation and I haven't called on you yet. Just raise your hand or something, and I will keep track of the time to make sure if we have time for comment, people can get in.
Just as your Mayor Van Gordon's also an executive.
Oh, thank you. And I am sorry, I forgot. We have one more, and that's Mayor Van Gordon. You want to introduce yourself?
Sean Van Gordon, Mayor of Springfield.
Bonjour, Your Honor.
Good to see you, Pat.
Okay. All right. So we have our agenda here, and I am wondering if anyone would like to throw out a motion to approve the consent agenda along with the minutes and the other attachments.
Sure. I move passage of the consent calendar.
Right. Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion or concerns? Nope. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that was unanimous. Thank you. All right, and with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kate.
Great, thank you. All right, I'm gonna try to share my screen. See if I can. Are those at home, are you seeing a PowerPoint? Okay.
Actually, I apologize. Actually, I was seeing an agenda, not a PowerPoint.
I'm convinced Dinah Aldridge is everywhere.
Oh, good, that is working. All right, so I hope that at this point, those online are able to see a PowerPoint titled Poverty and Homelessness Board Executive Committee. Awesome, thanks for the thumbs up. So today, to start, I wanted to give just a reminder related to the changes our recently updated Poverty and Homeless Board Charter made to the Executive Committee. As you may recall, at the last meeting, the full membership adopted the updated Poverty and Homelessness Board Charter. The next step is for that charter to go in front of the Board of County Commissioners, who will review that charter and make the final approval of it moving forward. While we're in this interim period, and we have an executive committee meeting, I did think it was appropriate to just remind folks of what was in that document. It did equate to some membership changes, which included to our sector representatives. We are going to have 5 sector representatives. And right now, those sector representatives have specific seats. And so, for example, there might be a philanthropy sector representative on the Poverty and Homelessness Board. As membership seats come up for renewal, we'll transition those very specific seats to more generalized sector representatives. We'll be doing the same thing with the community stakeholders. In some cases, there are very specific seats. So, for example, there are 2 coordinated care organization seats that were on the Poverty and Homelessness Board prior to the charter bylaws that have been transitioned to just simply being broad-based community stakeholder seats. So, for example, CCO representatives could absolutely be one of those stakeholders, but the consideration will be for just a wider array of individuals who fit into one or numerous kind of representations of those stakeholders. The last being people with lived expertise of both poverty and houselessness. This does widen the number of people that are identified for seats that have people with this type of lived experience. And so as seats come open, we'll also be opening up the opportunity for folks to move into these lived expertise seats. A number of you have been willing, and I greatly appreciate this, to remain in your seat, even though the end date of your term has come and gone. And I've mentioned a few times that we are going to get out a new application for these revised seats. So I just want you to know that we're in the final drafting stage. And so there will be an application for the Poverty and Homelessness Board open seats coming out in the next week. And I'll be sure to send it out to the full Poverty and Homelessness Board, and specifically to those of you whose seat term will be ending. So looking specifically at the executive committee, this includes, there will be a sector representative. We'll have our vice chair, our 2 vice chairs, as well as our chair of the Poverty and Homelessness Board. We'll have an elected official as well as a lived expertise rep. And so we'll move to this structure once we have the new PHB members on board in their seats. The other change with the executive committee that the charter brought was reducing the number of times that the executive committee meets. I will say, if we looked at the last 2 or 3 years, the executive committee met on average 5 times a year. And so shrinking down to 4 is not significant. But it also creates, I think, hopefully a more focused conversation. Looking at the annual agenda for the full board meetings, which we have some steps that we're going to be taking today to help develop that full board meeting agenda for the future. Monitoring the implementation of the PHP strategic plan. Of course, we need a strategic plan first in order to do that. And so we'll have a few conversations today around starting that ball moving. Reviewing and commenting on relevant legislation. We all know that the legislature just ended recently. We had some good wins related to houselessness and addressing poverty, which we'll talk about later today. And then as we move forward into the year, we can talk about key advocacy agenda items. And then lastly, planning a joint meeting with the Human Services Commission to talk about the advocacy agenda items that the 2 bodies might collectively advocate for at the state level. Identify joint educational opportunities that may be of interest to both bodies, at that joint annual meeting. So this is what's identified in the charter as the key focus for the PHB Executive Committee. Let me pause there and see if there's any questions. Okay. So I'm going to continue to move forward, and I spoke with the Chairs Committee a week ago regarding pulling together our annual agenda, which basically looks at each month and what are items we want to make sure are on the agenda. And the Chairs Committee astutely recognized it would be valuable to gain the perspective of PHB members around what they would like to see, particularly whether there are groups or agencies that they would like to have come to the Poverty and Homelessness Board to share their either needs related to houselessness and anti-poverty work that they would like to see, the Poverty and Homelessness Board move to kind of see if they can address any of those challenges, as well as for the Poverty and Homelessness Board to know what these groups are doing to make sure that we are not duplicating efforts and to see if there might be partnership opportunities. So this QR code and this survey right here brings you to a 3-question survey. And so my hope is that both Poverty and Homelessness Board members and those who are listening in would take a moment and fill out this survey. We're going to keep it open right up until a week before the next meeting. And then we'll share the feedback with the chairs so they can take a look and see what they might be able to fit into the PHB agenda for the next year. Some ideas that the Chairs Committee came up with in addition to doing the survey was just the recognition that there are fewer dollars available through the county for the important services that our amazing agencies in the community provide. And so there is an opportunity to share funding opportunities that exist here in the community or beyond that agencies might be able to apply for and to be eligible for. And so what you'll find as a result of that is in each Poverty and Homelessness Board packet, there's going to be a one-pager. And in this month's packet, that one-pager is the very last page. So page 39. And it says funding opportunities for human services. And so just, an opportunity to share resources. I am the person who's pulling it together. And so if you have something that crosses your desk and you think that your colleagues or partner agencies ought to see it, feel free to send it my way and I'm happy to add it to the list. I'll do the same. You all know that we do the weekly newsletters. And so if something, is sent to the weekly newsletters, I'll also add it to this document. So thanks to the chairs group for having this fantastic idea, and we certainly hope it's helpful. There was conversation about how the funding for human services is very much diversifying beyond the county. And I appreciated that point because I think it's true. We're greatly seeing that, especially with the 1115 waiver coming into play. That likely is going to be a game changer. And we know that that doesn't sit with the county, that very much sits with Oregon Health Authority and our partner CCOs. For the chairs, anything else you'd like to add regarding our conversation or the survey? Sure.
Well, the only thing that I'd add is encouragement to do it. And really if we could get 100% participation, that'd be fantastic on this, because that's really how we get our best information. That's how you get your best information. So, and it's easy. You've made it very easy can you click right on that?
You can, you click right there and that'll
right
move
to
you
it.
through.
Yeah, so it's a piece of cake for everybody to do. And how long does it take, Kate? 4
It
minutes?
should take you, yes, 3-4 minutes.
Yeah. No excuse for me to not do it,
Yeah.
which I think I did. So.
Well, you heard it here first. Commissioner Farr asked you to fill out the survey.
James Ewell is nodding his head, so I think I have support.
As did James. Any questions about the survey or those pieces?
I do want to say thanks and appreciation for sharing that and bringing that back in about where we're moving, not only with the executive committee, but having folks with lived experience, because that did come up at the last meeting. And so the new structure that we're moving towards make sure that at all levels of the PHB, we have folks with lived experience in their voices. So thank you.
Great. All right, so the next topic that I wanted to touch on was strategic planning. I think we can agree that we need one, and that there's a lot of different moving pieces related to the Poverty and Homelessness Board that would be more effectively connected through a strategic plan. And so what the chairs and I discussed is creating a 3-year plan. Sometimes the Poverty and Homelessness Board has done a 5-year plan, but it just feels like there's too many things at play that would really lead to significant changes in the next 3 years, let alone the next 5. And so it made sense to focus on a 3-year plan. The key with the strategic plan is that we would stay within the scope of the Poverty and Homelessness Board. And so while we know that behavioral health supports, for example, and changes to the criminal justice system, for example, are needed when it comes to reducing houselessness, that would be outside of the scope of the Poverty and Homelessness Board. And our updated charter helped to really identify what is the Poverty and Homelessness Board scope, and will be helpful as we move forward for things that are not within the scope of the Poverty and Homelessness Board to really dig in and create action items around. What can happen is it can be a part of an advocacy agenda, and that the advocacy agenda might be targeted locally. We know there's many advisory boards in the community, as well as at the state or potentially federal level, as we collectively, in partnership with the Human Services Commission, create advocacy agendas. So the new charter verbatim says that we would review our current investments. And so what dollars are going toward what type of programs, from permanent supported housing to street outreach to family supports to help move households beyond poverty. What strategies are at play, and what are the performances or the outcomes that our programs that are currently funded are achieving. And then look at that information to then identify what new investment strategies, changes, or continuances would we move forward, and then what would be the projected outcomes for those. I actually feel like All In, the executive order, is well aligned with that, where we now are being asked by the state to invest in specific types of programming with an end goal in mind. And so it would be very similar with the approach of the strategic plan. And then lastly, engaging stakeholders, which is incredibly important with any type of a strategic plan, and making sure that we are very much engaging people with lived experience of both poverty and houselessness across kind of the full continuum of those who are still experiencing those realities, as well as others who have experienced those realities but have, moved into different situations at this point. So a few questions for this group that I'm interested in your feedback on is one, there has been some feedback that system modeling, so we have a homeless response system, again, with all these different programs in it. And there are opportunities to work with agencies across the nation to create system modeling that allow for communities to say, we're going to invest $1 million into street outreach. And through the modeling, it allows you to see, as a result, like you'll need 200 fewer shelter beds and 300 more permanent housing beds. And so you can kind of see if you move one lever by investing additional dollars, how does that affect the rest of the system? And it's not a perfect science. The reality is there's a lot of factors that build into it. We know our community is different than West Virginia, for example. But there is value in the system modeling if it's something that we'd like to move forward with. It is a one-time investment of about $20,000. And while that's a lot of money, it also would be during this current fiscal year. And so it wouldn't affect the next fiscal year, where we know we're dealing with some budget reductions. So just want to give some space for folks to react to that system modeling idea and share whether they think it would be a worthwhile endeavor. Zoom user.
Sorry, that's Chris. Chris McAllister, lived experience seat on the PHP. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Awesome. I have always been an advocate for the PHP's strategic planning process. When I first got appointed to this body, we had a 2016 to 2021 plan, and elements of it had healthcare, mental health, advocacy, et cetera, et cetera. And I feel like that was one of our strongest successes. It allowed us to map on and plot potential add-ons or be able to roll off things into other projects, which ultimately led to the youth projects that we have, some of our PSH, and then forward steps moving forward, such as the county-owned navigation center. So I really believe and support the continuation of a 3 to 5 year plan, knowing that if we had stretch goals, so to speak, we meet some of these other criteria, we meet these other frameworks, we would be able to continue the work. One of the things that we ran into with All In is the prevention of being able to do braided funding, even though a lot of the systems that we were required to use require us to use them, which makes a lot of things have to be brand new, which does not make a whole lot of economic or ecological sense as we try and serve a growing population with a shrinking number of providers. And so whatever we do in our advocacy, as we look at stakeholders, as we look at community partners, we need to make sure that we don't just accept what is the easiest or the lowest hanging fruit, but we actually make some hard decisions and hard dives so that way we can account. I feel like we could have and can still get millions of dollars from other sources if we build it right. But if we are only going to be reliant on government, then we will never get there. I yield.
Thank you. Mayor Van Gordon?
I'm comfortable with taking a system, and spending time and energy on system modeling. The only caveat I would put into it is just it isn't an exact science, and I think it's one of those things that it's valuable to look at, and it's easy to sort of walk past and make bad decisions with as well, right? Good data to try to get, find where our true north is good, but also being aware that, we also want to be aware of like that it's always got to be working towards our ultimate goal.
Commissioner Farr?
Thank you. Thanks, Chris, and thank you, Mayor. I'm going to is it okay to give a little bit of a historical perspective on our strategic plan? I love what Chris had to say about the effectiveness of the earlier plan. When we first assembled as a Poverty and Homelessness Board, we had a very robust strategic planning session. And we came up with the document that you've seen over and over again, wonderful document that had so many things on it. And the things that we addressed on the strategic plan, we did very, very well, very thoroughly, and for the most part, completely. But what happened was it was easy on a plan like that to drift from, what are we calling it here? We're calling it staying within the scope of the PHP. And I think that's really essential, that we find ways to demonstrate the effectiveness, to get wins with the PHP. And the way to do that is to stay within our scope and make certain we don't have resource and focus drift. We've all been a part of strategic plans. We've seen them that work and we've seen them that don't. We've seen them that go on the shelf and never get looked at again. We've also seen them, I think, in our organizations where it's an integral part of everything everybody does, because it really is simple, easy to understand, and not just the strategies, but the tactics, which can be really quite dynamic. Tactics can often change from day to day. You get new ideas, new resources. Hey, that wasn't there before. It can be added into a tactic without adding to the strategies. And I think if we're able to focus on that, then with the limited staffing resources that we have, and it will always be limited, no matter how many you have, it's still limited, right? And even if you have Kate, Bud, and James Jewell on the job, it's still limited. So with the limited staffing resources we have and the limited funding resources we have, to make certain that we're able to do things, not just, as Chris calls it, the low-hanging fruit. It's not always a low-hanging fruit, but sometimes the things that we can do seem easier because we have the resources to do them. And I'm really excited about a strategic plan that we can all understand, that we can all get on board with, and that everybody, every time you're doing something, whether you're on staff or whether you're on the board, you can identify which part of the strategic plan it is contributing to. Because ultimately, if we allow drift, if we allow ourselves to get too deep into projects we simply aren't going to be able to be effective at addressing, we're all going to be frustrated. And I think over the last few years, and I'm going to blame COVID more than anything, we've been frustrated with our inability to sew up the wound, so to speak. Now the wound's getting larger, there's no question about it, but I think, Kate and James, I think our strategic plan needs to be something that is manageable, something that's doable, and something that at the end of the day, each one of us can say, hey, we accomplished something. So I hope that's the focus that we have.
Thank you. And I just want to say I support the system plan and the 5-year with the strategic plan. I think when we made the last strategic plan, and one of the reasons why it was so successful, I think it was because it was clear around with federal dollars and state dollars, and kind of we had a little bit of foundation for something specifically around the housing. So we had like a strong foundation and a lot of clarity from funding what they were moving towards in that next 5 years when we were creating that plan. And I think right now we're trying to make a strategic plan where that is really murky for us. Mm-hmm. And so I agree with that we have to be realistic with what we know right now, with where funding is going and resources, what we can do and accomplish in the next 3 years. And I do like the system approach. And I think as we get that, and hopping on Mayor Van Gordon's comment of being able to bring that to the stakeholders so that we can look a little bit downstream Because I think as we, looked at the systems model and what other places had been doing, and we were building things, that there was some information probably downstream we did not have. And so we built it, and then we're like, great, but we didn't always get the outcomes that we wanted because we didn't realize oh man, there's a whole bunch of other stuff that once we build this, we need all this other stuff in the community, and we don't have that yet. So I think being able to bring those two together so we can have a cohesive plan that, well, if we build this, then we're also going to need to work with the community at large because we're going to need these pieces in order to see the successes and the outcomes that people would like to see. And so I think bringing those two together would be really helpful.
And Chair, I think in doing that, if somebody on the street says, well, what are you doing? Each of us can have one or two or three things to say, we're doing this, this, and this, and demonstrate that we are moving forward. And, I think if I've experienced frustration by hearing of all of the things that we're not doing, but in fact, we're not going to be able to do everything. And let me ask you a question, Chair. Do you have a job that's not here in this room?
Yes.
I thought you might. And Mike Fleck, do you have a job that's not in this room? We all do, and consequently, we can't be relied upon. The board itself can't be relied upon to do anything but give policy and then lend a hand where we can provide leverage and allow the staff to gather whatever outside resources we can gather to bring on and focus without us giving you tasks and rabbit holes to run down, say, take care of this, when we all know that it's not going to get taken care of if we put too many things on the table. I'm trying to be succinct in that. I don't know if I was, but I was supporting what you had to say, being able to demonstrate that we are doing something. We are moving forward. We're pushing the ball uphill. We're moving the needle, however you want to, what's the word? However you want to describe it. So.
Thank you. That feedback is very helpful, and I'm hearing support for the system modeling, but also just kind of the broader 3-year approach, as well as an interest in stretch goals, which may be very appropriate as we walk through the feedback that we're receiving, staying within the scope of the PHB, making it simple so that PHB members are able to share, these are the key pieces that are being worked toward, and recognizing that this strategic plan won't necessarily be everything that is needed, because unfortunately there just isn't the ability to do that, but that if it is on the strategic plan, there should be steps in order to progress those action items. So the next question that I have is also related to the strategic plan, and it is just where should the process and planning be discussed? On some level, the clarification in the charter identified that the executive committee would kind of be the body that was looking regularly at the strategic plan to ensure that steps were moving forward. And so it could be that this is the group that helps to create the process and the planning for the strategic plan. We also, in previous discussions that I've been involved with, have created another task group of folks from the Poverty and Homelessness Board that would tackle those questions and then bring it back either to the executive and or the full PHB. So wanted your feedback as to what direction we ought to go in so we can start these conversations.
I will throw out there that I am open either way. I think we can bring it back to the PHB at the next meeting. And if people would want to be involved, I think as long as we have people on the committee that are willing to commit the time commitment and just to get that done. And that's how they would like to move forward. And if they say they want the executive committee to do it and then bring information back to them because they don't have the bandwidth, then I would be okay with that as well. Mr. Fleck?
Yeah, I agree completely. I think that the executive committee certainly can do it, but I would want to include anybody else who wanted to be involved. So it could be a hybrid of us and others. I certainly would support that.
Well, I agree with that. The danger is stretching people too thin. And I asked the question earlier, who has a job? Well, everybody's got a job, and there are only so many hours in the day, and committing to the level that we're able to participate is I don't know if anybody else is like me, but I overcommit all the time. I say, yeah, I can do that, and then at the end of the day, I say, well, I didn't get to do that because there aren't 2 more hours in the day. So I think making certain that it's not overburdening any one group of people, and making certain that that we do have as broad an input opportunity as we can. And Mike, your idea of a hybrid, I like that, because sometimes, particularly on some of the issues, there are people who are maybe a little bit more experienced in thinking about it. That way you get more well thought through processes rather than just what I thought of this morning when I woke up.
So what I'm hearing is to bring this question to the full poverty and homelessness board, and that the executive committee would be open to being that lead for the plan and open to inviting others, into the discussion, potentially, as a part of the executive committee, or, open to a full different task group, recognizing that everyone's time is precious. And so you want to make sure folks are able to add that into their busy lives.
And I would like to have the clarification that if we do create a separate subcommittee where we wouldn't be doing it in this meeting, as to whether the county actually has the personnel to stand that up. Or if there would have to be some other type of design. So, because I know that, I think sometimes we just make an assumption that you guys are available to to staff everything that we do. So I just want to make sure that when we present that in April, that everybody's aware that if we create a separate subcommittee from doing it, the hybrid where we take an executive committee meeting and bring other people in to start the process, whether the county has the ability to provide that support.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. We'll definitely come with that answer. All right. Well, I appreciate the discussion of these questions. You want to entertain? Feel free.
Oops, we're around time. Okay. Staying on the time, we got a couple of minutes, so Zoom user, if you want to.
Okay, Chris, I will change my name so it reflects on the record. I just wanted to share that I appreciate the idea of a hybrid subcommittee. And when we changed or had to close down our shelter stakeholders meeting at one point, we did have community partners such as Shelter Care, Carry It Forward, and St. Vinny's offer space and offer staffing supports if it helps move things forward. And so please note there are underutilized resources in this community, and it doesn't all have to go through the one funnel. I yield to you.
Thank you. Turn it back to you, Kate.
Yeah, I actually think we can turn it over to Amanda.
Hello, thank you. Let me see if I can get my screen sharing. You have, hopefully you can see my screen now.
Yes.
Cool. This is just right in your packet. I'll just do this from here instead of the PowerPoint. So you all have all this information. And I apologize, I sound a little congested. I'm a little under the weather, so bear with me. I have been out on leave, so I wasn't able to give an update on the COC award from our last competition. We did receive that COC award just before I went out. And so I just wanted to go over the details of that with you today, answer any questions, and then talk about sort of what's coming up next for this coming competition in fiscal year 24. So in fiscal year 23, which is the one we just heard about, the OR 500 COC received about 6.6 million, which if you're thinking is a larger number than we typically receive, it is. This number included renewal, permanent supportive housing, and rapid rehousing programs. So the existing programs that we have under COC, as well as the YHDP Youth Homelessness Demonstration Program, Joint Rapid Rehousing TH and Supportive Services Project, HMIS and COC planning, as well as new PSH and coordinated entry bonus projects. So this is the first year that YHDP is renewing under the COC program. It was a separate funding source, and then once those initial 2-year terms sort of come to an end, they renew under the COC program. So this was the first year that we had those included, which I think accounts for about 1.7 million of that amount. The awards also include standard increases for PSH and rapid rehousing for fair market rent adjustments. So those are standard each year. Any projects that have rent in them include those increases. And then this year we also received additional bonus projects, which is great news for our community. So I'll talk a little bit about what those look like. We actually got 3 new bonus projects, 3 additional new projects, which is huge. It's hard enough to get one. So it was pretty amazing that we got all of our ask, including all 3 new bonus projects. So the first one is through St. Vincent de Paul as the recipient. That's called HARP. It's a PSH project that will be 18 units of PSH serving chronically homeless individuals using a scattered site model in the community. The second one is Homes for Good, the Bridges on Broadway project, which I believe many of you know about. This funding will support services in that project for 25 of those units for chronically homeless individuals. And that is a project-based model that will use the project-based vouchers. And then the third one is a coordinated entry supportive services only, or SSO project for domestic violence. So we finally received that DV bonus. We have applied in the past and had not received that. So that will be fantastic in supporting some of our work to ensure access and assessment and referral through coordinated entry for people who are fleeing domestic violence, survivors of domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, or stalking. And so we anticipate we'll be able to work really closely with our victim service providers and other DV providers in the community to get that rolling and coordinate on that project. So just as a funding summary for that amount, so that included COC renewals in the amount of about 4 million, new projects about 500,000, and then planning is 283. So that has increased a little bit as well. That is a percentage of our annual renewal demand. So as we get more money, that amount increases a little bit. And then we also included that 1.7 for YHDP renewals as well. And the good thing about adding to the bonus projects that we received and increasing our overall ARD to 6.6 million really allows us to increase additional resources in the future, since both planning and bonus money that we are allowed to apply for is a percentage of our annual renewal. That means as that increases, we are able to apply for additional resources in a larger amount the coming year. So that's very exciting as well. I included just an overall chart here of the last 10 years, and I think there's a further breakdown in your packet as well of what this looks like over the last decade for COC funding. You can see that we don't typically have huge increases in this funding. It's stayed pretty constant over 10 years' time. And really that amounts to a decrease essentially in the previous years, because it really hadn't increased to keep up with what we needed to support the project. So it's welcome that we got additional funding this year. And we certainly will continue to go for those bonus projects to increase our amount under COC. Any questions on the funding summary before I get to our score and walk through that?
Go ahead, Amanda.
So we do get a breakdown of our scoring summary from HUD. They don't as you all know, provide detailed scoring of each question in the application, which is always very frustrating. We really get a general score for different sections. And so we don't always know exactly what we can improve upon, but we have an idea of which sections we scored well on and which areas maybe need some improvement. And so you will see in your packet the full summary report that we receive. And overall, we did score well this year. We scored above median at 158.75. Pretty typical around the scoring that we normally get. However, some areas we did improve upon and get a little bit higher score, which probably contributed to us getting those bonus projects, which are really based on your overall COC score, whether you're able to get those. So I did include a trend over the last couple of years of what that scoring looks like. However, it's important to remember that the application does change each year. So this isn't necessarily an apples to apples comparison. You can see the points possible in different sections changes depending on the questions. A couple years back, we had an entire section on addressing COVID-19. So it does change from year to year. It's not an exact comparison, but it gives you an idea of sort of trends of where we score well and then where we don't. You can see under system performance has increased in terms of how much point value that is at 60 points. A couple years back, that was just 23 because some of it went to COVID. And addressing that and that sort of narrative piece, we were able to get points in coordination with housing and healthcare. That's been a bonus. We didn't receive that last year. So you can see some of those trends here as well. So what we scored well on overall is project capacity review and ranking, and that really looks at how we review our projects each year, how we determine new projects, and really make sure that our projects are serving the most vulnerable and the populations that we need to focus on. We also, again, scored on that coordination of housing and healthcare. Both DePaul and Homes for Good were able to get commitments to include with their applications for bonus projects, and that allowed us to get full bonus points in that area. And then coordination and engagement. Overall, we scored well. That really talks about how we work as a COC, as a system, how our board is made up, and how we engage stakeholders and people with lived experience. I think some things we need to improve on. Overall, our system performance is where we lost points. Some of our strategies, I think we really need to flesh out a little bit more. I think we will have more to talk about in this upcoming competition, just with the work that's been happening with All In allows us to talk about additional strategies, additional resources we've added, new practices that we've started to do. We've done some work around improving coordinated entry. We've done racial equity work. So we've taken a lot of different steps over the last year that I think we'll be able to talk a little bit more about those. But I think focusing on system performance, and it sounds like we want to do that as well through some system modeling, through strategic planning. We'll probably talk about that. So I think there will be more we can add to that going forward. And then I think engagement of people with recent or current experience of homelessness is something we can improve upon as well. We did score well in terms of how we engage people, but I think where we lost points was that we don't have a lot of recent or current experience of homelessness expertise within League. And we need to find more concrete ways to really engage with who's currently homeless in improving our strategies. And then coordination around domestic violence, again, is an area we did not actually score well in this area, but hopefully our new domestic violence bonus project will help us get that work started and at least assess who needs to access our system, what that need level is, and then we can kind of go from there and start really coordinating that system better in our community. Any questions about that before I move on to wrap up? So HUD has announced informally that the competition will move to every other year, which is a welcome change. We hope to see that. Many COCs have asked about that for many years, as long as I've been doing this. But that would really allow us to spend more time on implementing the strategies that we talk about and improving performance rather than just doing the work of completing the application, which really takes the full year to do. And so that is fantastic. That will give us more time to do the work that we need to do. For this upcoming competition, we're at the point where we have completed our registration and we're sort of awaiting HUD and our grant inventory worksheet. So we're at the point where we complete our COC evaluation of our existing projects so that we're ready to rank those when the competition comes up. So I'm going to be formulating the ad hoc COC committee to do that work. We also need to talk about new project opportunities and sort of have an idea at least of what we want to submit in the upcoming competition for bonus opportunities. So I will reach out to the folks that participated in that work before, but if there are additional members who are interested and have not participated, you can always reach out to me. And I'll be sending something out. I can send it out to the full PHB. So if anyone's interested in working on that committee, I imagine we'll have to meet sort of several times over the next several weeks. I hope to get this evaluation out by May, just because we're a little bit behind with my leave. And so there will be sort of an urgent need for additional meetings over the next several weeks. If you have capacity, I would welcome your participation. And then we'll just move forward with implementing the new projects we were awarded. So a lot of those are slated to begin with the new fiscal year, and I'll work with those other co-applicants, St. Vincent de Paul and Homes for Good, to make sure they can implement their projects as well. And we can update you on how all that work is moving forward. Any questions?
Commissioner Farr?
No questions, Amanda. Just a comment on the effectiveness of the work that you do. You know, there's one on the scoring categories. There's one that I particularly pay attention to, and I like it a lot. And that's 1D, which is coordination and engagement, coordination with federal, state, local, private, and other organizations, where we scored 48.5 out of a potential 51. To me, and help me with this a bit, it feels that illustrates that we're able to leverage outside sources to help our work be better supported, better funded, better supported, whatever it may be. Is that a good read of that?
It is, and we're able to share who it is. You know, we have to write significant narrative in the application, really specifying like what do those partnerships look like, and how are we able to leverage different supports. So yes.
And I believe that is something to shine a light on, because the public watching us work wonders and hopes that we are doing exactly that we're leveraging outside resources, and that we're making certain that all of the agencies and entities that are working on the same thing here in town are coordinating their efforts. And I think that illustrates that. So to me, once again, shine a light on that, let people know that we are effective. When I say we, I get to call myself we. You're the we I'm talking about. That you're effective at doing the job, not just doing your job based on the resources, the ever shrinking, it seems, resources. You're getting more from the outside. So I would just issue a big bravo on that, Amanda.
Thank you. I don't have anything to add to that. Thank you.
I just want to say great job. One of the things that came to mind, and I know we're talking about, and it has been an ongoing struggle with trying to engage folks that are currently or were recently homeless. And I understand, because they're just trying to take care of their basic needs. So being engaged in committees might be off, not even in their purview. However, I do want to say that we do have a wonderful opportunity, because we have a lot of partners who are doing the sanction campsites and the shelters and the navigation center, and who are doing street outreach. And there might be a simple way for us to identify, whether that's a Google survey or something, but how we can get those partners to engage with those that they're serving, to get some feedback and some input with some of the things that we're doing, and to get it directly from them, and then they would funnel it to us, and it wouldn't be a heavy lift for you guys either. So
yeah, that's something we've talked about within League, and League has certainly expanded over the last year, which is fantastic. We've gotten a lot of interest, and we have gotten some interest from folks who are currently enrolled in programs, who are currently either homeless or unstably housed. And so we're doing better in that outreach for League, and we're open to figuring out ways to make League more accessible as well. They've talked about that. And we've also, as a group, they've talked about going out and doing focus groups at shelters, at other projects where folks are staying, so that we can get that feedback directly, or thinking about other ways we can really put folks on the ground to get that feedback. So we're open to hearing any suggestions, and League wants to do that work.
well, thank you, Amanda. And not hearing any other requests for comment, we'll move on. Back to you, Kate.
Thank you. All right, so I wanted to provide an update regarding the budget conversation we had at the last full PHB meeting. And I had come to this group, the full PHB, and shared that Human Services Division is having to reduce the overall amount of funding that they are allocating out to different nonprofits for programming, and that I would be providing options to the Board of County Commissioners to provide advisement to the Human Services Division. And so I want to thank folks who provided feedback through the survey that was shared during the last Poverty and Homelessness Board meeting. I had shared the end results with the commissioners, and the advisement that the commissioners offered was to consider the all-in programming impact. So that was option D, if you recall those numbers. And then to allocate funding based on outputs and outcome achievement. And so the closer a program is to achieving the contracted outcome and outcomes that the program plan specifies, the greater opportunity they have to be funded. We are taking a close look at programs that are culturally specific, recognizing that they have an important place in our system, and that it might be incredibly detrimental for them to go away. We are also looking at programs, especially those, if we have a number that are kind of within the same kind of percentage of outcome achievement, we are going to dig a little further and look at their outcomes related to individuals of color. And if there are programs where not only are they enrolling a high number of people of color, but they are also positively exiting a higher number of people of color, and we're seeing that folks are not coming back into the system. If that's applicable, then that would help us make a decision, if all other things are stable. And then lastly, just along the same point of culturally specific, community specific. And so, if there's a program that is for youth, we want to think about what would happen to the system as a whole if the one program that served youth for this reason were not to be funded. So those are factors that are being considered. We hope to share whether a program will be funded in fiscal year 25 by mid-April. And so we'll send out emails to the agency executive directors to let them know. I want to reiterate that this is not, something any of us want to see occur. We've done amazing work during COVID as a community, and it is just incredibly unfortunate that those COVID dollars are going away. And we need to just right-size the system as we move away from the COVID dollars. It is also why, sharing the successes of the legislative session, I think, is important because it does help reduce the initial impact that I shared, where we were feeling like there was a $4 million reduction that needed to be made. The legislative investments may help reduce that overall reduction. During this last legislative session, there was $65 million allocated to emergency shelters that were at risk of closure or had closed and needed to be reopened. The big X factor is we're not sure how the dollars are going to be allocated. Right now, the similar allocation from the legislature last year is being done directly from Oregon Housing and Community Services to the nonprofits. And so we're not sure if that same allocation is going to occur, or if they're going to allocate the dollars through the county, like usual, and that the county then would be allocating those dollars out to nonprofits. The other thing that could happen is the state may provide the funding to the county, but tell us exactly who to fund and how much to fund. I heard that could be an option too. So we don't know. We'll certainly let shelter providers know as soon as we do. Shelter providers, if you get a note from the state saying you're getting fiscal year 25 funding, let me know, because I may not get that note. But we're fortunate that those additional dollars were made available because we know it's going to be a benefit to our community members, regardless of how it flows. Commissioner Farr?
Regarding with OHCS, we had the discussion yesterday at Homes for Good. The discussion there was a bit different. It was about the speed with which funds are allocated. Now, OHCS has issues internally that I'm sure they can substantiate, but is there any way that we can be an advocate to help steer them in the direction that really is most effective on the ground?
Yes. And we have advocated in a number of different ways. I can share that I personally had a conversation with a representative from the governor's office this week, making that specific ask, and sharing the benefit of having dollars flow through the county that are unencumbered, so that we can fill in gaps that exist and then help to be able to weave together, the myriad of funding that exists to support shelters. And, it certainly is taken under advisement.
And if I may, there's no less funding that goes to the agencies providing the services. It's just a little bit, it's better coordinated in making certain that we are able to coordinate our resources with what's coming from the state. So that once again, it gets us to the point where we're most effectively coordinating and engaging with other agencies, with local, federal, local, and state agencies. I mean, they want us to do that. Let's help us to do it better.
We would like to help them.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Everybody wins in that.
Yeah. The other legislative win that's notable is $34 million was allocated for rent assistance. And this is a kind of a second pot of ORDAP dollars. We currently receive ORDAP dollars as a part of the round 2 all-in funds. And so there are nonprofits right now that are spending ORDAP dollars for prevention rent assistance. And this would be a second tranche of ORDAP dollars that the county would receive. At this point, we don't know how much we're going to receive, and do know that 20% of that $34 million will be going to culturally specific agencies that will be identified directly from the state. So, that leaves like $27 million to allocate throughout the state. So we'll keep folks posted there as well. So regarding the fiscal year 25 funding, thank you for your patience. Sincere apologies that we're in this situation. And we'll keep you posted as soon as we have answers to provide regarding fiscal year 25 funding. And then lastly, I just wanted to share, I mentioned that provision of human services funding. This is what you'll find on that last page document, but just encourage folks to check out these different grant opportunities. I know that the CCOs have been incredible in meeting with agencies if they have questions. So that could be an option. And we have 2 amazing CCO representatives who are part of the Poverty and Homelessness Board as well. Just for sake of expediency, if I may hop to the PHB member application, I mentioned that it'll be open up in the next week. But as a part of that process, we need to have a task group who is reviewing the applications and determining who will move forward as a PHB member in a formal seat. And so I just want to let folks, I'll be sending out an email asking for poverty and homelessness board members to volunteer to be a part of that group. And if you're interested, would love to be able to work with you so we can identify those new members. So I'm done.
Thank you, Kate. Did we have any comment from the executive committee? Hey, I just had one question. When you were talking about the next steps and you had community specific, does like rural community, is that like a community specific or?
Yes,
Okay.
it does.
Okay.
Yes. So thinking about how important it is to have services across the county, we would consider that if, especially if it were just the one service point of access, that would be important to sustain.
Thank you. Okay, and so with that, we are moving on to jurisdictional updates. And going on my, do I just call it by county?
Yeah.
I mean, by bullet point?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so do we have any updates for Lane County?
It seems to me that this entire meeting's been an update from Lane County. So there's nothing I would like to add other than, from the legislative session. We're, of course, working on Measure 110 reform on two bills. One is the actual reform, which includes deflection. And then the second one is the funding for I won't go into details right now, but the county's working hard on that in coordination with other agencies. And there's a lot of unpacking to be done on that.
And Cottage Grove?
Just briefly, our city council will be meeting with a consultant to talk about homelessness and our efforts, trying to address, the challenges there. When we opened our shelter a couple years ago, we thought we were creating extra sites in case there were more people than the shelter could hold. We created 2 sites and they are near full. And so our challenges have exacerbated, and we now have 2 basically unmanaged camps and some challenges that are going on with that. So we'll be meeting, like I said, in May to work on that, and I will update you guys later.
Peter, if you have anything to share, you're welcome to.
Thanks, Kate. No updates from Eugene at this time.
Thank you. And Springfield, any updates?
Well, I'll have some more updates next time. United Front's going on right now, and they're, human services are always a big conversation back there. The other thing, Springfield Council's on break the next 2 weeks, but as soon as we come back, we're going to take up the housing diversity tax exemption. And one of it's along the line of what a MUPD is, but one of the things included in ours is to use it, you do have to provide some sort of public benefit. And no affordable housing is one of those options, and a couple different versions of that. So I'm really interested to see how that impacts our development landscape in the housing world.
Thank you. And any updates from the Chamber of Commerce?
I don't know if Brittany is on.
Okay, I didn't see her name. And then do we have any updates from other communities that I haven't mentioned?
I do want to share just a recognition that prior to December of last year, we did not have a 24/7 shelter in the Florence area. And thanks to the Nancy Devereaux Center, which is stationed in Coos Bay, but has already been providing services in Florence. a 20-bed emergency shelter is open and serving households, and I hear doing well. And they've been full since the third day. So I just want to let folks know that it's pretty exciting because we know that houselessness is across the full county, and that it isn't common for folks to go from the beach, to the more urban area to seek services. And so I'm really pleased that that shelter is doing well, and exciting just to share that it is there.
Thank you, Kate. Any other updates? All right, and we will move on. We did the application, correct?
Yes, and I see the conversation in the chat, and
Okay.
And Terry, thank you. I will say now in the Poverty and Homelessness Board charter, it calls out that there would be meetings in locations where folks who are houseless are. So, at a shelter, in a kind of a day center. There's plenty of places where people drop in who is houseless in the community, and that we would do kind of a sit down, like share what it means to be on the Poverty and Homelessness Board conversation, answer any questions, share flyers. So I appreciate the charter task group, because I think they added some additions to the charter that will be really beneficial in helping us be able to continue to diversify the experience of folks who are on the board. So we'll be working on making those happen in the next month while the Poverty and Homeless Board seat application is open. So Terry, thanks in advance for helping with that. I'm sure we'll reach out soon.
Thank you. So we are on the draft agenda.
Yeah, so just thinking about the next all-member meeting, we'll talk further about the strategic plan, and we now have the questions for them as to where the process and planning discussion ought to occur. The HMIS team through the county is working overtime right now to submit the system performance measurements, which occur every year. And I'm sure reaching out to many agencies asking for some data quality updates. So thank you in advance. Those system performance measurements will be submitted very soon, and we'll share those with this group. You heard Amanda mention that that's a place for improvement for us with the continuum of care application. And so we'll be able to share more specifically, where those improvement opportunities are. We'll do a quick all-in update. I can share at this point that we are kind of in a middle place where we're still spending out round one all-in dollars for all programs except for prevention. And then prevention is they're spending around $2 already. And then we're working on putting the infrastructure for round two in place. There are programmatic changes that round two is making across the different programs, particularly related to rehousing. And so we'll be sharing those soon with providers, just to help them consider, whether it's programming they want to provide, or if it isn't, for those providers who provide rehousing specifically. So the key thing that I would share regarding all in is that the governor has a very clear vision and is very much kind of leading the path of all in programming. And so it's interesting from my vantage point, because usually, we don't get this level of guidance from the state. And when Lane County calls and like kind of pushes back on something, usually it's staff at the state level who can kind of make the decision as to whether a change can occur. But what is very clear is that pushback goes to the governor. And so it is interesting to watch this dynamic. What is heartening for me is that the governor is very involved and very focused on our state and how we are working to reduce houselessness, which I don't know that there's been that level of focus from recent governors. So that is very heartening.
I can add historically on that. I've never seen this level of focus from a governor, particularly on the areas that we are most interested in. Just happens to be what she is also most interested in. And from my perspective, she's on track to be the best governor Oregon's ever had.
You heard it here first. And so we had a celebration yesterday and invited any of the all-in providers just to pause and to recognize the work that had been done and the outcomes that had been achieved through round one. And we're hoping we'll continue with that success into round two and can provide a greater update then. I'll also share that the dashboard continues to be updated. We continue to see, very positive outcomes as, we move from week to week. We see, additional folks being rehoused, which is incredible, and additional folks receiving prevention assistance. And we know those additional dollars are coming too. So that's exciting. Yeah. Do you want to share where we are?
I'd love to, yeah. On homelessness prevention programs, we had a goal of 741. We're currently at 916 as of yesterday, which is 124% of goal. On rehousing, we had a goal of 247. We're at 391, 158% of goal. And on emergency shelter beds, we projected 230. We're at 304 currently, which is 132% of goal. So it's recognized far and wide how good of a job that everyone in Lane County is doing to focus on the areas that we said we would and be successful at doing it.
Yes, thank you. It's exciting to be able to see those outcomes continue. And then lastly, we will have likely a representative from at least one of our coordinated care organizations to share more about the health-related social determinants of health needs benefits that are coming to fruition in the next months, both the climate change benefits as well as the housing benefits, and the fact that there's a capacity building grant open right now for agencies to take advantage of. So be jam-packed.
And I just want to throw on there that in addition to housing and climate, there is the nutrition benefit that is on there as well for providers who assist folks with food. So, from the executive committee, anybody, any comments about the draft agenda? All right, Kate, it looks like you got an agenda there.
Yes, thank you.
So we're at the wrap up. Is that supposed to be me?
Yes.
Oh, I don't want it to be me. Do you?
That's okay. That's all right. Thank you. What I'm hearing again is we've got questions for the next Poverty and Homelessness Board. We're going to send out and ask for a continuum of care evaluation task group, as well as one to screen the Poverty and Homelessness Board applicants. And then we will also send out the PowerPoint from this meeting in the next couple days.
And thank you, Kate. I will bring myself a pen because every time I host the meeting, I learn something different. And when I got, I was like, oh, I did not take notes on anything for next step. So, so thank you.
You need a pen?
I am going to bring a pen and a piece of paper next time to keep
We
notes.
could probably facilitate that.
All All right, and with that, it looks like our next meeting, everybody, is at Harris Hall, if you're going to join in person. And as usual, we'll have the hybrid meeting where you can join by Zoom. And the next executive committee meeting will be in person or hybrid, but we're not sure of the location right now. We're going to be in person.
Probably here.
Okay. All right. And with that, if no one has anything else, I will adjourn the meeting.
Au revoir.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank